So what is a function? A function, by definition, is a relation defined by a set of ordered pairs, usually x and y, x and y. So basically what this means is that if you have a function, this function should have an x and a y. So this x is the input, and it's also sometimes called the range. Wait, sorry. It's called the domain. And the y is the output, and also sometimes called the range of the function. So how does this happen? So technically, what a function does is that it takes the input or the x, it takes it, and then this input undergoes a rule or a process, and then it will give back an output. So let's have a real life example or a practical example for us to better understand this concept. So for example, your mother has asked you to buy, so for the example, this is you, and this is your mother. Your mother told you, son, you need to buy some meat at the supermarket. And then you go to the supermarket. So when you go to the supermarket, you have in mind a certain amount of meat that you want to buy. So for this situation, the function will look something like this. The input will be the amount of meat that you want to buy, or the weight of the meat that you want to buy. And then the output will be the total cost of the meat. So the rule for this situation would be that you need to multiply the um, input or the amount of meat with the price of the meat. So for example, let us have x be our input or the weight of the meat, and y be the total cost. So your equation will look something like this. Y is equals to, for example, let's say that the cost of the meat is equals to, um, say 200 pesos PHP, because I'm from the Philippines, per kilogram. So whenever your x is equals to 1, or you want to buy 1 kilogram of meat, your output or your the cost of this will be equals to 200. Sorry, I forgot to write the x here. 200 pesos per kilogram multiplied by this x, which is equals to 1 kilogram. So therefore, your y would be equals to 200 pesos. So for 1 kilogram of meat, you will be paying 200 pesos. So when you buy 2 kilograms of meat, of course, this price or this cost will go higher. So let's try to solve for that. So 200 pesos per kilogram multiplied by the amount of meat, which is 2 kilograms. So the total cost would be equals to 2 times 200, that would be 400 pesos. And also, if you want to buy 3 kilograms, this price will also increase. So why? But the process is still gonna be the same. The process is still gonna be the same. So as you can see, we have here an equation, and for this equation we have an input and an output. So what a function really wants to do is that its purpose is to give us a mathematical model for real life situations such as this, but it's not limited to just one equation per output. We will be discussing more about that on later topics, but for now, let's focus on this. So there are also other illustrations when we want to illustrate functions. The first example of this is this equation, but there are also others like set of ordered pairs. A set of ordered pairs. So for a set of ordered pairs, it will look something like this. It usually starts with a bracket. Oh no. Usually starts with a bracket. Yes. And then for each pair, you need to enclose it with a parenthesis wherein the input usually or always, not usually, it always comes first. So bracket and then open parentheses. So for this example, we will be writing 1, comma, and then 200, which is the corresponding output for this input. And then for the next pair, we will do the same. Let's write first the input, comma, and then after write the output for this corresponding input, of course. So comma, open parentheses. The input for this one is 3, and then the output would be 600. And then we enclose it with a bracket, of course. So another type of illustrating or another way of illustrating functions is also um, table of values, which is more commonly used by business related courses, I think. Table values. So from the word itself, you will be having, for this illustration, you will be having a table, not the round table, just a table, wherein you will be tabulating the input against the output. So we have here our input and then we have here our output. So when x is equals to 1, our y would be equals to 200. And when x is equals to 2, our y or our output would be equals to 400. And when x is equals to 3, our output would be equals to 600. So this is how you illustrate a function using table of values. Another way of illustrating functions will be using graphs. So when using graphs, we will be having two axes, which is a vertical and a horizontal axis. So the vertical axis is for the output and the horizontal axis will be for the input. So when using graphs for illustrating functions, it's basically the same as tracing coordinates or tracing points in this Cartesian coordinate system if you're familiar with it. It's just graphing an equation, which is the equation for our function actually. So for example, for this equation, the equation for our function would be y is equals to 200 times x. You can use online graphing tools to graph this equation, but I will not be using that in this video. So I'll just try to graph it manually on this notepad. So let's try to do it again. Okay. So for example, this will be 1, 2, 3, or the weight of the meat. And then this will be 200, 400, and then 600. So this part, okay. Then here, the next point would be here, and then the next point would be somewhere around here. So if we trace this lines or these points, we will be creating this line. I'm sorry, it's not straight. It's not my fault. It's the stylus's fault. It's not mine. But if you use a graphing tool, it will look more precise. Okay, let's just use this line for, I don't know, maybe educational purposes, for aesthetic purposes. So yeah, that's that. And also, let's not forget about illustrating functions as an equation. So although we used equations earlier, actually functions are more commonly illustrated using the expression f and open parenthesis x and close parenthesis. This is read as function of x, or sometimes it's shortened as f of x. So one of the most common misconceptions when students first try to study functions is this expression right here, because students assume that you need to multiply this f into this x, but actually that's not the case. This expression just means that f is a function of x, meaning that whatever the value of this expression is, it will be determined, or it will be affected by x, or the output. So for example, if we use the above example earlier, we use the equation y is equals to 200 multiplied by x, or the weight of the meat that you want to buy. And if we write it in functions, it will look something like this. F of x is equals to 200 multiplied by x. And this equation is actually the same as this equation. We just changed this variable y into f of x. So for example, you bought 1 kilogram. Uh, you will be writing in this format, meaning that when the function has an input of 1, it will be equals to 200 multiplied by 1, and the function of 1 is equals to 200. And if we bought 2, for example, this will be equals to 200 multiplied by 2. So f of 2 would be equals to 400, and so on and so forth. And this is the reason why most functions usually is written as f of x. But it's not limited to f. You can also name a function whatever letter that you want. Sometimes it's g of x, h of x, even I think some use t of x. Any letter you can use it. So I hope I see you on the next topic. Bye bye.